Chris Hoffman, Mayor of Jacksonville Beach. I'm going to be co-chairing this meeting with Art Graham, the chairman of the Community Redevelopment Board. So to get things started, just to recap a little bit, we had what I believe was our first joint meeting with the CRA about 2 years ago. And I think one of the things we really realized at that meeting was that our two boards were pretty siloed and there wasn't a really great communication flow back and forth between the two organizations. So I think we had a couple subsequent to that. They've dropped off a little bit, but hopefully this will be something that we schedule regularly, which we can talk about as the last item on the agenda. But I'm someone who values a strong communication flow, particularly with so much going on in our community redevelopment districts and how important they are to our city. I think it's important for the council and the CRA both to stay pretty engaged with each other. So since this is the first time that this particular group has met, I'm gonna go around and I'll call on you so we don't have to do the awkward pause and wait for someone to jump in. And just introduce yourself, how long you've been on your respective board, and because the council knows I love an icebreaker, tell us your favorite spot or thing to do in either of our CRA districts. And so I will go first. You already know I'm Chris Hoffman. I served 8 years on the council and I think I'm in my 4th month as mayor. And my favorite thing to do is sit out at the Seawalk Pavilion and listen to blues music. And sad that we won't be doing that again this year, but soon. Sandy, you're at the top of my list.
I'm Sandy Golding. I've been on the city council for 2 years, and my favorite thing to do in the downtown district is to actually run through the downtown district. It's a really kind of a nice scenic run.
Georgette?
Thank you, Chris. Georgette Dumont. I'm on council for 2 years now. Before that, I was on the planning commission for a long time. And favorite thing to do in the districts? I used to run through them, but we got COVID and injuries and such. Now I kind of sit at home. I'm sure they would be fabulous to curl up against a palm tree and read a book or something, though.
David?
Hey, I'm David McGraw. I've been on the CRA board for 2 months now, and my current favorite thing to do within one of the districts is take my 1-year-old daughter to Sunshine Park, and she runs around it like crazy and loves it. So
Awesome. Dan?
Good evening. I've been on the city council for 4 months as well, and my favorite thing is probably Becky and I enjoying a frosty beverage on the top of Casa Marina.
And Dan also previously served on the Board of Adjustment. Gary?
Good evening. Been a resident of Jacksonville Beach just about a little more than 3 years, and have served on the CRA board now for just about a year. And you'll always find me on my bike somewhere within one of the districts or within the great city of Jacks Beach.
Thank you, Gary. Francis?
Hi, I'm Frances Pavlovsky. I have been on the CRA board for 8 years, working on my 9th year now. And past time, I used to spend pretty much my whole life at Sunshine Park for my children. Now they're teenagers, so my new pastime, or my most favorite thing now, is to walk at lunchtime, enjoy the boardwalk, and look for some place to eat.
Chet?
Chet Stokes, new city council member. I would say I've been really enjoying the 904 pop-ups lately. Those have been really great. I've gone to just about every one that I've been in town for, and I like the food there, the shopping. Probably get things that I don't need, but I like supporting local small vendors and small businesses. So that's been my favorite thing so far lately.
And if you haven't seen they're on Sundays. Not every Sunday, but I think once a quarter. And I think the next one is March, maybe 14th.
Yeah, I
So
think it's the 14th.
great event, lots of local vendors. It is an alcohol-free event, lots of food trucks, all those types of things I think all of us like to see down there. Corey?
Hey everyone, I'm Corey Nichols. I've been on council for just over 2 years. Previous to that, I was on the CRA for 4 years. In the downtown, I like cruising around on the golf cart with pineapple in it and maybe stopping by Lynch's for some live music.
Fernando, I know you might be biased with your answer here.
Thank you, Mayor. Fernando Meza. I'm a newly elected city council member. So my favorite thing to do is pretty much just ride my bike and cruise down First Street and enjoy everyone that's doing the same thing. But lately I've been sitting on an oceanfront park and enjoying the view and watching everybody work out and kids play around, and it's kind of cool. That's my favorite thing.
Awesome. Art?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. How are you doing today?
Great.
My name's Art Graham. I've been on the CRA for about 4 years now. And my favorite thing to do is ride my bike up and down First Street.
How's that hip doing? When are you going to get back on the bike?
It may be a while. I could probably ride the bike in about 2 weeks, but my biggest fear is falling off that bike.
Fair. Jeff?
Hi, I'm Jeff Jones. I've been a CRA member for, I guess, about 5 years. I'd have to look it up, and then was on the Planning Commission a couple of years before that. And our favorite thing to do is to sit out on a nice sunny day on the patio at Lynch's and watch the world go by, which what I guess would include Fernando and Art from time to time. So.
Great. I think I got everybody. Mike, do you have a favorite CRA experience yet?
Got one for each. South End is doing a nice evening walk around the loop at Sunshine Park. And at holiday time, I can't believe nobody said it, grabbing a hot chocolate over at the Deck the Chairs opening weekend.
Good one. Good one. Okay. Thanks, everybody. And thanks for sharing your very positive responses. And hopefully we'll get to know each other a little bit more as time goes by and we work together on some things. The first thing I wanted to update you on before we move into the rest of the agenda was on the downtown hospitality business owners meeting that was held. The first one was held yesterday. I would say by all accounts, it was a great success. We had 11 downtown businesses represented out of the 18 that were invited. And something I learned in this experience is that our city council emails go to spam if they're sent to Gmail. So just heads up on that, council members, if you're ever wondering why you didn't get a response or anything like that. So we had a little bit of a communication struggle, but it all worked out. From the city, myself and Chairman Graham were there, as well as Mike Staffopoulos, and I think 4 members of the police department, including Chief Smith. So it was great to have good representation, and again, not just from the police department. A lot of the sentiment from the business owners prior to this was that we kind of, they have to come to us when there's a problem, or we come to them when there's an enforcement issue, and there really isn't that two-way street of communication, which is what we're trying to establish here. I made it pretty clear to them we're not always going to be able to do everything that they want to do, but that we can assure them we will listen, that we will appreciate the fact that their eyes and ears on the ground in our central business district, and that their feedback matters to us, and that we need to keep that communication going. So I think it's going to be, it's not always going to be easy, but I think it's going to be a win-win. So what we're going to do with that meeting, they do want to have it once a month. We're going to keep it to an hour, and it will be held on the 4th Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m. and the locations will rotate. So the first one was at Lynch's. In addition to kind of going around the room like we just did and having everyone introduce themselves so that they can also meet each other, we'll have an update from the owner of the business that is hosting us to tell us a little bit about their business, the history of it, a little bit more about it so they can learn a little more about the businesses as well as the employees. We did a update on paid parking, since our paid parking program will be picking back up in early March from Commander Shaughnessy. And we even did some very basic, some acronyms that we throw around and we're used to them, but that people outside of the council and CRA may not be as familiar with, simply defining CAPE and defining CRA and explaining to them what that meant. And I think the majority of the room was not familiar with what either of those terms meant. So we spent some time with that too, and we'll probably continue to while we have, as we have different people come through. We also talked about some of the things that they want to talk about. So I actually have a long list of topics that they'd like to discuss, as well as the opportunity to bring in experts in other areas. So for example, one of the issues we talked about was homeless and transients. So I wrote down Karina from Mission House can come and make a presentation at one of these. The first one will be actually at the March meeting, which is going to be on the cusp of Sexual Assault Awareness Month, which is April. And we will be doing a press conference, and you guys will hear more about that, as well as the meeting of the business owners will be that afternoon. So we'll be doing some awareness training, and that'll be coming from the Jacksonville Women's Center. So overall, and I've had some good feedback from them today, I think this is going to be hopefully something that will evolve into a self-sustaining merchants association. I'm not trying to force that at this point. I think we need to take baby steps into even just getting them together and seeing themselves as a team with us at the table with them. But I think it was a really great first step. We do plan to rotate through CRA members and council members kind of once we get up and running and established, as well as once the CRA program manager is hired, so that they can provide the consistency of agendas and topics and everything throughout the meeting while the other people from the city rotate. Art, did I miss anything? Mike, anything else to add there?
The only two things I can think of is we did talk about the delivery policy and just make sure that was on everybody's radar and how effective it is. And we talked about, and I can't remember the law that was passed that gives the police more leeway as far as dealing with transients and dealing with problem people in the downtown area.
I believe that was chapter 20. So that was the delivery. It was interesting to see their reactions, because I think overall they were fine with it. It was just a matter of communicating to the various different drivers in the change in policy. So we'll continue to take their feedback in terms of agendas, but and we'll go forward with once a month, and we'll see where it takes us. And that is all I had. We're going to turn it over to, does anybody have any questions on the business owner meeting? Gary?
Just a quick question for you, Mayor. Great program. I think this could take us and help us a lot, both from the city perspective as well as the CRA. So along those lines, would we also be doing something similar with the South Beach District CRA businesses?
It's certainly an option. I prioritize the downtown hospitality businesses for a few reasons. It's a highly focal area in terms of the resources of our city, as well as just kind of what we're known for in the media and the community and things like that. So that's where I wanted to start. I will say the merchants in the downtown that I simply could not get a hold of were the chains. So I got an email from Carrabba's, it bounced back, so the easiest people to get a hold of were the local small businesses. So I don't even know what kind of luck we would have getting national chain representation. But I'm certainly open to that at this point. If somebody wanted to start putting that together, but my priority, and I think the most impact can be made at the downtown area. Anybody else? Okay, we're gonna turn it over to Mike.
I think Mike just pointed to me.
Yeah, there's a,
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not looking at the hands.
No, not a problem, not a problem.
Georgette.
I just want to confirm, what you said. It's going to be once a month, the fourth Tuesday of the month at 2 p.m.
Yes.
Okay, I was trying to write
If
it down.
March
as you were-
30th is the fourth Tuesday of the month.
All right, I was trying to write it down as you were talking. I just wanted to make sure I got all of those different aspects correct. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And we did talk about that we were doing a select group of people, business owners and managers, and not necessarily just frontline employees at this time. We're also going to invite groups in as they would like us to and as we see fit. They suggested Chamber of Commerce and things like that. So we'll be kind of selective about that because we want to really ensure an open dialogue and kind of a safe space for everybody to be open with each other about the challenges and opportunities that they're facing. Okay, now I'll turn it over. Any other hands?
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, Mayor.
sorry. Sandy, go ahead.
So you mentioned that the meetings right now are for the downtown hospitality businesses, but I know, for example, there's a business, it's a PRR management that's right there in the heart of the downtown. And then there's other businesses that are not necessarily hospitality, but they're impacted by what happens in the downtown area. And some of these, like the homeless situation and some of the other things that you've mentioned. So at what point do you think that you will open it up to those? Because I know that I know someone who actually works for that company that I don't know if it's PPR or PRR.
It's called Human now. It's used to be PPR.
Yeah, and they've had some comments about some of the things that are going on down there. So I would hate for us to not include them in the conversation as well. So do you have any idea when you would open that up to some of the other businesses?
So, and Francis asked the same question when I rolled this out at the CRA meeting. As you guys probably know, Francis has a business in that area as well that is not a hospitality business. I think that because we're trying to establish a two-way communication and not just here, I think that the hospitality businesses have a big impact on our resources in terms of our police and parking and things like that downtown. And I think we have a big opportunity to, again, establish that positive relationship. I certainly could see expanding to the other businesses or bringing them in for special meetings for certain topics. But as of right now, I wanted to start kind of, to me, in the area of the most need to start building those relationships. So I think that the mix of people may certainly change, and hopefully ultimately this would be a downtown merchants association, but that's not, we're starting it as a downtown hospitality meeting, and we'll, we've only had our first meeting, so we'll see where it goes. But certainly not, the intention is not to leave those organizations out. It's just to get started. I do not see any other hands. Let me scroll. Okay. Now, Mike is going to give us an update on the CRA manager position, as well as the structure of how it's going to go. And then we're going to get into the discussion of the South End TIF funding. Mike, I don't know if you want to just roll into your slides once you're done with the CRA position, whatever works for you.
We'll talk about the CRA position first, and then we'll see where you want to go with the conversation on TIF and whether or not the slides are needed. But to give everybody an update, a couple of weeks ago, we held our preliminary phone interviews with 5 candidates. We had 6, but one of them backed out on the day of the interviews. Of the 5 that we interviewed, we have 3 that we feel are finalist quality. And we will be conducting Zoom interviews with those 3 finalists tomorrow afternoon. We have 1 candidate out of St. Mary's, Georgia, who's the Economic Development Manager and Main Street Coordinator for the last 3 years. We have an individual out of the city of Oakland Park in South Florida, where they've worked a subordinate position within the Community Redevelopment Agency and as of recently has assumed some of the roles of the OPCRA coordinator. And we have an individual out of Roanoke, Virginia, who has been doing economic development for the past number of years. So each of them brought a different skill set to the table, but all of those skills would be valuable to the CRA coordinator position, which is why we felt those are the three that we should do the interviews with. We do have, I believe it's Gary Patow from the CRA, who will be representing the CRA board on the interviews with us. Given that this is a municipal interview process, we are following our normal protocols, which means we have a standard list of questions that will be asked to each of the candidates. So that way we can have comparisons of how they answered each of those questions. And then with each of the internal panelists, if there are follow-up questions that we want to ask of any of the candidates, we can obviously dive down deeper based on the answers that they provide us with. Our intention is that if we come out of the interview of the three with someone that we feel is the finalist for the position, at that point, we'd like to invite them to the city of Jacks Beach to meet with not only city staff, but also with the CRA board. And at that point, see if we're going to be making an offer to the individual while they're here. And that's what we're looking at. Any questions? Councilor Dumont.
Thanks, Mike. So these are obviously phone interviews for the second set, but you're only going to have the finalists come to the city to actually see the CRAs and what their scope is going to entail.
That's correct.
And related to this, what is the progress on the new planning and development director? Are we in the same process with that? As I see these as kind of parallel positions that we're hiring for.
We did phone interviews a week or two ago for that position as well. And we're currently in process with doing a little bit of due diligence on each of the candidates.
Thank you.
The answers that were provided.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Board Member Pavlovsky.
Thank you. I had a quick question. So since all these are obviously going to be candidates, if we elect to hire them, that they would be required to move, what would the typical time frame be? Let's just say that we hit the right person on this interview and everybody likes them when they visit us, and then we have to give them some time to move. What is the estimated time frame if everything went smoothly for them to start working?
That's a good question. In the case of the one that's the closest out of St. Mary's, they would be able to start the quickest because their expectation is that they would drive the job for a while to see if it makes sense to move or to stay where they are and just commute. For the other two, one of them is in South Florida and the other one is in Roanoke, Virginia. So obviously in either of those instances, a move would be involved. Needless to say, we did not dive into whether or not they are renters or own property or how much time they need to give their current employer, et cetera. I think it's safe to say anytime a move that's involved, a move is involved, you're probably looking at least a minimum of 30 days and more.
Thank you.
And I see no other questions. So Mayor Hoffman, I'll turn it back over to you to see how you all want to discuss the South End TIF.
Okay, we put Art Chairman Graham on the agenda to lead the discussion of the South End TIF funding. Art?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This was actually a difficult decision for me. I was all over the place, actually. I was not on the prevailing side, so I'll call on my my vice chair, Francis, to speak about what the decision that was made. Francis?
All right, thank you, Art. Hi, everyone. So you guys, it was a roundabout conversation in regards to what our thoughts were for giving money back to the city and our recommendation for you all. I do know that you guys get to make the actual decision. So we unanimously decided that we would recommend that you don't release the funds to the city. And we had a couple reasons as to why. I'd like to just go through them really quick, and then if anyone else on our board would like to maybe chime in on it, I'd like to do that. I'm assuming that's okay that I do this now. So the majority of us believe that there's still a lot to be done. I do realize that you guys would like it in your budget, but here are the things we talked about. The South End businesses are slowly going away. You guys have heard about, you obviously know about Pier 1, those original stores over there, and there's also talk about some other stores leaving as well. But the CRA was developed in that area. Part of their job was to help do incentives to get companies to come into that district. We're now at a point where a lot of our businesses are leaving, and we would like to use that handbook that we had shared with you guys to incentivize companies to come back to the South District, just the business district. So that's one thing that we would like to tackle, and we would utilize some funds to help us with that. Another thing we talked about was infrastructure. For the past 8 years that I've been on the board, it seems like the only thing we've ever gotten done down there was infrastructure. Gary mentioned multiple times, we don't know where that stands, what's still left. So we'd like to have an actual plan review to tell us what infrastructure is left, so that before we don't have funds, we would be able to make sure we put some aside, or we can at least schedule out repairs. So when the CRA that area disappears and goes into your budget, it's already ready and doesn't need repairs. We talked about acquiring property. There's been multiple discussions about that. Some of it city owned, some of it privately owned, to finish our big vision, which brings us to what is our plan. For those of you who have been following the struggles that we've had, and I love the progress that's been made, we are finally in a position with everything we've done to put an actual plan for the next 5-10 years for the area, and we'd like some time to do that, and that plan is going to require money. And then the park was a huge discussion point as well. For those of you who do not know, we have been kind of branded as not taking care of Sunshine Park. It is not because we don't want to, it's because we can't legally repair the park because we don't own it. We have been wanting, and we do have money set aside to take care of that, basically replace the whole thing. Even if it's exactly like it is now, then we'd have the ability to maintain it. So that is on our very, very short list. We've also talked to the police department about security. We've talked about possibly looking at this, the civic center, the community center. Maybe that could be a place where the city itself could use more offices for part of their area for expansion, and maybe we can make it more inviting to the locals in that area. So there's a lot of things that we are trying to get done. And I felt kind of bad, Mike, so I do apologize. When I was like, here we finally have all these steps, we got our plan done, we got, you know, we're getting these people here, we're finally getting our very first budget meeting, and now you're taking this money away from us. And I was a little bit harsh, and I do apologize for that, but I really do believe that this group on the CRA has great intentions to put a plan together, and we really want to bring businesses down there and use some money for incentives, and we really want to put some money towards purchasing and replacing things that then become part of the city. You guys don't have to instantly use money to replace them. So we just want to have a big underview of what it is that's left so we can move forward. So we're not saying indefinitely we don't want to return it. We're just saying give us a year or two so we can say, yes, we're good. Because I do think most of us believe that we're fine giving it, but just not right the second when we're finally starting to run. Does that work, Art?
Yes. Are there any questions? I don't see any hands. Gary.
The participant box.
Yeah, Art, I'm seeing Councilor Dumont followed by Councilor Meza with questions.
Okay.
Thanks. I agree with what Francis said. I listened to that meeting, and I felt that the CRA was struggling between 95 and 50. With the assumption that they had to pick one or the other. And 95 and 50 are the upper and lower bounds of anything that can be decided in between, which is why you also had that 75%, which is what Jeff asked about. I asked for, well, can we just have like that midpoint? We don't necessarily have to do the 95, and we don't have to necessarily go down to the complete 50. We can do something in between. That's like I said, those are the upper and lower bounds. My concern ends up being that we don't have a plan. We don't have a written plan for the south end. We might have a plan in people's heads and in administrative heads as to what they want to do and what they're thinking about, but we don't have something documented on paper as to what we are trying to achieve in the south end, and how much it's going to cost to be able to get to that end result. I will say the south end has come a long way from when the CRA was started. The CRA was started, it was woods, it was nothing like it is today. In the south end, citywide is, it's kind of looked at as what the rest of the city wants to be. There are still a lot of issues in the south end, and I feel that there is some kind of a midpoint between 95 and 50 that we could agree on, at least for the short term, for us to develop a plan, a written, documented plan as to what we're trying to achieve on the south end. And then we can go back and figure out how much it's going to cost and how we spread those costs out between the years that we're able to have the CRA. And then in that difference, what we don't need, that's the point that we should start to look at reducing the TIF funding to send over back to the county.
Thank you, Georgette. Fernando.
I have a question for the chair and the vice chair. Francis, you mentioned some of the businesses on the south end were leaving. Do you know why they're leaving? Is it something the city's doing or COVID? Is there anything that we could do to keep them here? If it's anything that's on our end?
I personally don't know all the reasons. Obviously, Pier 1 went out of business and closed their doors. I've heard there's rumor mills that is it Bed Bath it's right there in the it's not Bed Bath and Body Works, it's Bed Bath and Beyond. There's rumors of them leaving. There's a lot of empty spaces. So we're just trying to say that if we can incentivize some bigger, and I know it would be great to have some local there, but the odds are that area is more conducive to national chains. It'd be nice to bring some more national chains in there because we do have empty spaces, and some of the restaurants in the area haven't worked out very well either. So, and we just put in a whole bunch of infrastructure, so that is no longer a hindering factor in it. So I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know the actual reasons as to them leaving. I just know that they are. And I just want to touch base on Georgette's comment. We were told, and just so you guys know, we were told we really had only the one yes or no. We couldn't make a difference in the percentage we're willing to obviously recommend that you guys give back to the city. I will just tell you that we would have given some back, but just giving that much back right now with so many uncertainties, we're not prepared to do. Me personally.
Fernando, did that answer your question?
Yes.
Gary Paytow.
Thank you.
I just wanted to provide a little more background information to everyone. The original plan for the South District was done in about 1987. In 2011 was the last time that there was a revision done that was approved by City Council, and that basically focused on infrastructure work. In working with Public Works, it's come to my attention that we've got about $23 million worth of projects still to do down in the South District. That's from the 2011 plan. Public Works also indicated that there's a need for doing a revised stormwater management plan for the South District, which will entail potentially some other projects. This, along with the fact that now the infrastructure down here in this area is already 20 years old, I think we need to think about how we're going to maintain these systems and then ultimately provide the funding where necessary to bring them up to today's standards. I was asked back in a year ago to put together a list of projects that potentially could still be done down in the South District. the CRA has not vetted that list at this point in time. And I think we really need to do that. And it includes a number of the things that Francis brought up, which includes, development of CRA properties that we have down here in this district, multi-use trails, potential real estate purchases, enhancements for policing initiatives, funding for future CRA staff that we just talked about a little while ago. And then also talking about street lighting and wayfinding signage, which are things that we're talking about doing in the downtown district, ought to be something that we should be talking about in the South Beach district also. So just to provide a little bit more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Corey Nichols.
Thanks, Art. One of the other things I'd like to see down there is potentially finding some way to bring more people to that area to help with the retail down there. It always seems like the parking lot between Home Depot and like the AT&T, there's a dead area out there that doesn't get filled unless it's Christmas or some special event. I'd love to see something like potentially giving incentives to a hotel to come in that area, or some kind of entertainment facility in that parking area, or find something else we can do. And I think that there's CRA funds can be used for that.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Sandy Golden.
Thank you, Art. I had a question. Gary brought up the age of the infrastructure in the South Beach district area. Does anybody on today's meeting know what the age of the infrastructure is, say, in District 3, the north part of Jacks Beach, where the district I represent? Just from try to understand where we stand as a city with our infrastructure as a whole.
That's got to be someone from Public Works. And you got to remember, a lot of your districts, a lot of old military base housing. Now, I'm sure we've gone in and changed a lot of the water piping. I mean, I've been here when they've changed a lot of that stuff out, but someone from Public Works will probably have a better idea of other things that have been touched or not touched. Mike, do we have anybody?
We have Dennis Barron on the call, but my guess is right now he's scratching his head because he doesn't know what the age of all the infrastructure is in District 3, other than the fact that I'm sure a good portion of it is old. And what that means is old, I don't know. I know that over the next couple of years, he has CIP projects to do full utility assessments of each of our different utilities, water, sewer, we've already done roadways, etc. But my guess is he probably can't give an accurate answer to that question, and I would not want him to guess.
Okay, another question I have too is statutorily, my understanding was that we need to have things on the books in writing in order to be able to expend those funds, continue to expend those funds in the CRA. And if we don't give money back, then do we have things on the books so that we're not getting ourselves into trouble, as I said, statutorily, with keeping that money? And who could answer that?
I can actually answer that question. As Gary said earlier, there's some $20 to $23 million worth of stuff that we currently have in the books. But right now we have it stretched out over the next 10, 15 years. There's other things that the board would like to look into doing, and you've heard those things already from both Francis and Gary, that we'd like to look into. We want to make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. My biggest issue with this and why I struggled so hard was, for the most part, this decision was made a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the decision was made because the two DRIs, my understanding, have both been closed out down in the South End. And I think the prior city manager was making plans on shifting those funds partially to Jacksonville and then completely to Jacksonville. And so that the horse is already out of the gate. My big issue was because there's been conversations with Jacksonville, I think they've already anticipating those funds coming. Now, granted, there's no, we can spend that $5 million a year for at least the next 4 years, 5 years, and not running into any problems with the surplus, but we just have to rapidly move everything towards the front and not have it spread out over the next 10 to 15 years. Did that answer your question, Sandy?
Yeah, thank you, Art.
Fernando, got you up there.
Yes, I just wanted to add a couple of things to Councilor Corey Nichols was saying. I know maybe a movie theater. I know right now with COVID, some of the movie theaters aren't fully open, but hopefully if we can get back to normal, maybe reaching out to a bunch of movie theaters, maybe bringing them over here. That's just something that I was just thinking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. Georgette. And just to let you guys know, I'm just going off of the hands that are raised. So if you want to speak, you got to go to the bottom of your screen under participants and touch on the little hand so you can speak. Georgette.
Thanks, Art. I didn't think Fernando would be that quick. I was writing down my questions so I wouldn't forget it. So I fully appreciate that the city budget projections were projected with the South End TIF going down to 50%. However, that projection was never democratically decided. It was not decided by a vote of the CRA nor the city council. And so that was an administrative decision, which can be problematic. But it was a previous administration, so I'm looking forward. And dropping it down to 50% as is what the projections were projecting. I think that we might be doing ourselves a disservice, because once we drop down to that bottom level, the county is not going to say, oh, you've readjusted your plan, let us boot it back up to 65%. Once we're down to 50, we are down to 50. We are never going above 50 again for the life of the TIF. So that's something I think that should really be considered. In addition, if we have just holding it off for 2 years to decide where to drop down to, and in the meantime, funneling the money back to the county, which is what we've been doing for the last year or so, it gives us some time to really figure out what the South End needs, what is allowable to do in the South End based off of our current agreement with the county. And that is a huge piece, because if we want to do incentives to bring businesses to the county, that might not be allowable for the funding we currently have under the agreement we have with the county. So we need to look at what our current agreement with the county and our percentages allow for, what kind of adjustments to our thought processes fall into those agreements, because anything that falls outside of those agreements have to be renegotiated with the city of Jacksonville. And that renegotiation could result in a mandated reduction in funding, or a more constrained way of how we can spend those funding. So we have a couple balls in the air, and we should be aware of all of those. CRA is a different agreement than the downtown agreement. And so we need to focus in on the CRA and what our allowable expenditures would be, and what it is that we're hoping to achieve within those allowable expenditures.
Thanks, Georgette. I'm going to skip to Mike, the city manager. He may answer a bunch of questions that may be coming up. Mike?
Thank you, Art. Just wanted to address a couple things, and I'll start first with what Georgette was just talking about. And I raised a flag with Jim Gilmore, and this is something that he and I will probably need to keep a finger on the pulse on over the next 30 days or so. And that is that the existing plan that's in place, the one that was modified in 2011, and then I believe had some amendments to it in 2017, that's basically the current plan that the South End CRA is working under. And that was working under an assumption that the build out was effectively complete, with the exception of a handful of capital projects remaining. So as Jim and I spoke just a couple days ago, as the council and CRA talk about what might potentially be new initiatives to start up in the South End CRA, if those are not currently contemplated within the existing plan, and it requires going back to the city of Jacksonville to negotiate an amendment to the plan, there's a high probability that they will only allow for a modification of the existing plan directly correlated to a potential reduction in the TIF. They could even ask for a shortened time frame associated with it. If any of you have had an opportunity to look at the CRA state legislation, there's a lot of power and control that the counties have because they're the clearinghouse for any of your CRA plans. I know that in my previous jurisdiction, there was a requirement for a mandatory audit of your CRA after 15 years. And if they felt you either weren't working fast enough or were too close to completion, they had the ability to pull the plug on your CRA at that point in time. So I just want everyone to be aware that I think what Georgette said is very poignant. As you look for what you might want to do on the South End, the first effort should be to do what you can do within the confines of the existing plan structure. Because if we have to go back and renegotiate, that's basically a renegotiation of all the terms and conditions, not just the city's request to add new initiatives into the plan. The second thing I wanted to point out was with regards to the proposed reduction in funding. In the conversations that I've had with our CFO, who's obviously been here for a while, it was not strictly an administrative decision to reduce the funds. It was also based on the 3-year caps that had been included into state legislation. And obviously, we're now seeing with the projects, the way they're spread out, we're currently in a spillback period at this point in time. I think last year alone, we did a return to the city of Jacksonville of $1.4 million and about $700,000 to the city of Jacks Beach. So working off of the 2011 plan, as was referenced by Gary, clearly, if you go by that plan, the city of Jacks Beach and the South End CRA have predominantly achieved the goal of what the plan was, which was to take what was underdeveloped property with irregular development patterns and have it complete its suburban and urban development to meet the needs of the rest of the city of Jacks Beach. I've got some photos I could show you, but I'm not sure if it's necessary, that shows what it looked like in 1980s when the plan was originally adopted, and an aerial of what it looks like today. But I think for any of you that have been around, we were talking about areas that the city went through condemnation and basically redevelopment and privatization of those properties for basically 4 major subdivisions that now exist on the South End, as well as assistance with the commercial build out. And as Art indicated, those 2 DRIs are now closed. So if we're going to start talking about some additional initiatives down there, Jim and I are probably going to have to hook up with one of our legal consultants and have them take a look at what you all are talking about and have a determination of whether or not that fits in the existing plan or whether a renegotiation is going to be required. Just wanted to
Mike, I'd like to see those photos. If you just have a handful of them, I think it would actually, picture sets 1,000 words.
I do. Jacob, can you do am I allowed to do a screen share?
Yes, sir.
And can you all see the, hopefully it's just the first slide. Are you able to see the image or the mouse moving around?
No.
Oh, wait, hold on.
There we go.
So you're able to see the 1985 base map?
Yes, sir.
Okay, hopefully it's clear because it's on my screen, but obviously I can't see what you're seeing. If you take a look at the overlay, and again, you can see the boundaries of the district. This is 1985. You'll see that the only real development that has occurred at that point in time was the infrastructure for the Riptide subdivision and the infrastructure, or at least the grid layout for the area around Sunshine Park, and some of the development around the single family units a little further south of Riptide. The development pattern on the east side of what is South Beach Parkway was obviously completely different. The area of Ocean Cay was actually subdivided for very small and non-conforming single-family residential development with, I guess that's called St. Augustine Street, cutting all the way from almost the intersection with Drax Drive, going all the way out to A1A. You had Jacksonville Drive that did not exist. And again, all of that area was previously laid out for a grid-like pattern. And then on the south side of the JTB, you had multifamily residential and limited commercial, even though it was set up for the residential. This is the aerial photo that goes along with the development at that time. This was the 1980s. And again, you can see nothing south of JTB. The commercial is just starting on the north side of JTB, and Riptide is just starting its development on the west side of South Beach Parkway. All the other redevelopment from Osceola all the way down to JTB is effectively non-existent at that point in time, except for some dirt roads that kind of create a grid system. In 2008, which is just a few years before that 2011 plan amendment was done to really ask the question of what is left, you can see that all of the commercial on JTB has filled in, along with the additional commercial and residential of the Valencia condos. You can see that Riptide is completely built out. The residents have started in earnest over by Sunshine Park. All of Ocean Cay is effectively built out. Paradise Key has its infrastructure installed. And I think the only thing really left at this point was looking to get the development pattern in place for the last chunk, which is Ocean Terrace, which then takes you to the 2021 aerial, which effectively shows that all of the development has been built out, with the exception of some infrastructure projects that are remaining, as well as some of the individual parcels that are held by the CRA. So I thought that would be good, considering, even for myself, you know, I understand the history of the CRA, but I was not here in the 80s or the 90s or the 2000s. And I did not know at the time that the city did massive eminent domain and condemnation of properties in order to make the development on the west and east sides of South Beach Parkway a reality. So I thought that'd be some good information for everyone, especially not just the council members, but also the new CRA board members, to be able to take a look at all that.
Thanks, Mike. All right, I'm gonna go back to the list. Francis, I got you at the top.
I just wanted, so thank you, Mike. That is good. I was here in the 80s, so I do remember when it was like that. But I will say that the only thing I wanted to comment on from previous conversation was that I don't think the CRA, and I am kind of speaking for all, so I probably shouldn't do that, but I don't think we believe that we won't give the money back or we don't want to give the money back. I do believe that we do think that we may have an excess amount. But I think what we're trying to say is that if we give it all now and we only spend that $5 million that Art was saying, there will be nothing other than that one big improvement or that one big replacement, because we won't have enough money. We'll have to wait years to build the money back up for future projects. So that's one thing I wanted to say. And then it's really hard to ask a board to give a yay or nay on something like this when we don't have that contract that you guys were talking about, and we don't have what it is we can and can't do, which brings us back to the planning. And we did the planning for the downtown district so we could understand in layman's term, what can and can't we do? We do not have something like that for the south end. So all we're trying to say is give us time so we can go through what is it we can do, what would the cash flow look like for things that we can do, and That's all we're really asking for, because we were given a yes or no, and by the way, give it all away now. So I just think in general, that's all we're trying to say, is just give us a little bit of time if it's possible.
Thank you, Francis. Gary Paytow.
I really just, I guess, need to reiterate the comments that Francis just made. She pretty much hit on all of my points. I think we're at a point where we just need to finalize any final planning that needs to be done down in the South District. This just hasn't been looked at for quite some time, and I think it needs some attention before we can say we're ready to release the funds. There are other projects, and yes, I fully understand that that is something that we as a CRA need to make the determination on, so that we can forward it to you, City Council, for your approval and consensus on the direction we would go for the South Beach area. It needs input from everyone. It needs conversation, because there's a lot of small little details that I think we haven't really buttoned up yet. And having the opportunity to do that, I think, is what we as a agency really need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Dan?
Good evening. So a couple things. Number one, I kind of concur with Council Member Dumont in the fact that we should be looking at, is there something in the median range? However, I'd rather see something in writing before deciding on that medium range as far as returning money or keeping money. Number one. Number two, Mike, maybe you can answer this question. It's my understanding in the documentation that I've read that the TIF funds cannot be used for the maintenance of any of the projects. Is that correct?
The TIF funds in the South End District can be used to maintain any infrastructure that was originally constructed with TIF funds. What you can't do is go in and maintain infrastructure that was not paid for originally with TIF. And that's the issue we've had with the Sunshine Park playground, is that the playground was not installed with TIF funds. So the TIF funds cannot be used to maintain it. It can only be used to replace it in whole.
Okay, I understand. So that might be a good bargaining chip if it ever came down to us having to do that, I guess. As far as projects are concerned, of course, like I think the rest of us, we'd like to see what that list is of what we can and cannot get involved with. Ideally, one of the things that just comes to mind for me is Jacksonville Beach welcomes you, welcome mat at all of our entrances into our city at J2B as well, you know, being enhanced and something like that. And I don't know that that would fall under that umbrella or not, but that's kind of what I was getting at, is what can this money be applied to and what can it? And I'd like to take a look at something that had that kind of list that we could all talk about at a council briefing. And thank you guys for the work that you do on the CRA.
Thanks, Dan. David.
Good evening. I just wanted to hit on two quick things. I go to Sunshine Park all the time, and it is crumbling. It is not being maintained, and it is the jewel of the South End. It is used by tons of people that live in the area, and we have it on the budget for 2025. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. So I think we need to move that up and get that maintained. And then, like Chairman Art struggled with his decision, I did as well. What pushed me was, if 800,000 is a big impact for moving that money to the Jackson Beach General Fund, then what kind of inverse impact would 1.2 million being removed from the community have on the South End? And that's kind of what pushed me over to that side, is, you know, that's money we're never going to see again. So that's all.
Thank you, David. Sandy.
So Georgette mentioned 75% as opposed to 50 or 95. I understand that the CRA hasn't really contemplated that, but if that were to be an option for us so that we're not going to the extreme and releasing, 50% of the funds and getting stuck at that level. What we need to do is we need to find out, can we do what we need to do with 75% versus the 50%? Or versus the 95%. And I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that with the CRA.
Well, Sandy, Bill Mann and CFO sat down and went over what we currently have, the $20 million. And they said, they put out a plan and said, we can get the $20 million worth done with half of what's down there in a timely manner, which is roughly 10 to 15 years. The question that we had, and the first question I had when this thing popped up was, well, nobody came to us and asked us that question. And so we had no input in, the time frame, number one. Number two, we have that CRA, we have those funds down there, I believe, into 2047 or sometime around then. You never know what's going to happen in Tallahassee. You may find out that they decide in 5 years we're going to start shutting these things down because they don't like the way they're being used. And so part of the fear is on our board is if that happens, now we're only halfway down through our list. We're only a third of the way down through our list. And so that's kind of the balancing act that's there. Some people said that maybe we're digging, looking for a wish list and not taking care of the things that were originally in the plan. I mean, so there's a lot of back and forth on this entire thing. And so that was kind of the struggle that came from me personally, and on what do you do moving forward? I mean, I believe $2.5 million is still significant funds, but I believe it's premature to give them back. But my thought was that the decision was already made, and you may run into bigger problems with your relationship with Jacksonville, because I can't speak for the current administration over the ditch, but my guess would be they already have some of these plans. They've already decided how to spend these funds. Did I answer your question, Sandy?
I think you did. I guess I wanted to get a feel for, is 75% even something that could be contemplated?
And when this came before us, which was in January, we were told that you guys are going to be making a decision. We talked to the city manager and he gave us some time to debate this issue so we can give you a recommendation. So he pushed back your decision several meetings so we could come up with a recommendation. And city manager thought that if you try to decide if it's going to be 50 or 60 or 70 or 90, you're never going to get it done in a short period of time we have to give you a recommendation. So we decided yes or no. We decided 50 or 95. And just so we can get it done in that short period of time. And that's why those numbers are that we can get in there. And Jeff asked a question in our meeting, is 75 on the table? And what I told them is, yes, we can make a motion and recommend 75, but there's no data behind that. It's just, we feel better splitting the baby in half sort of thing. Did that answer your question, Sandy? I assume yes.
Yes, it did. Sorry, Art.
Okay. Chet?
Yeah, kind of agree with you there that we don't know if 75 is going to do it. So I think we kind of, in my opinion, need to get our ducks in a row and find out what percentage is acceptable for everybody. Kind of go off topic real quick. David, board member David made a point on the playground equipment and getting that moved up. And I talked with Jason and he had said that was in the works, but obviously we haven't seen anything on paper. So that's something that the TIF funding can be used for. So it sounds like we really don't, in my opinion, don't know all the variables. I've liked what Councilmember Dumont and Councilmember Golding said of we need to figure out what we can spend this money on. And the only concern that I have is looking ahead towards our budgeting process with the reduction. It's from what I've seen that it's already been included in this year and next year's prelim budgeting. And the last thing that I want to do is see a millage increase. And the second to last thing I want to do is see a drop in services. So if we decide that we don't want to move from the 95 to the 50%, we as a city need to see something. Me personally as a council member needs to see how we're going to get the loss of funding. Even if we go to 75%, that's still a percentage that we'll need to make sure that we have funding for, because we don't want to let the rest of the whole city lose services because we're worried about the South End. As an at-large member, I'm looking out for everybody, and I want to look out for the North End, the South End, and everybody in between. So I want to make sure that we at least have some sort of plan and have some numbers behind this before we make a final decision. And I know that that's soon, so I don't know what we're going to do there, and that's for us to find out. But that's kind of what I'm worried about long term, is the budgeting for us as well, for the either millage increase or reduction of services, and those are both things that I don't want to see for our residents.
Thanks, Chet. We have one more hand that's up. I want to let you guys know, I've heard it mentioned about 3 times already, maybe 4, about Sunshine Park. To give you a little perspective, the replacement of the entire playground equipment is only $500,000. Okay, Georgette?
Thanks, Art. What I'm hearing between our two boards is uncertainty as to what we're actually trying to achieve on the South End. That in and of itself points to that we don't know how much money we need to achieve what we're trying to achieve, because we don't know what we're trying to achieve. And I really appreciate Mike's pre and post pictures. We have come a long way on the South End, but this is a unique time where we have this additional funding to be able to really do something, make it that minimum bar for what we expect the rest of the city to look like. And so I'm not saying that we should just totally throw out reducing the TIF funding into the future. I'm saying we should pause and develop a plan like we're trying to do citywide. And so I think this is a good time to just put a pause on the reduction of the TIF funding for another year or 2, maybe 2 years, to actually have the time to develop the plan, to know how much that plan would cost and how that would fit into our current budget assumptions to be able to move forward. I know that Art noted that Jacksonville's kind of, they may be depending on these fundings, but our issue is not Jacksonville's budget. Our issue is our budget. And I am more concerned with the budget of Jacksonville Beach than I am with the county's budget. And I know that there have been these assumptions, but these assumptions have been in the county as well as within the city. But we really just need a plan to meter out what it is that we want to achieve, how much it's going to cost, and then what the funding is to be able to achieve those things. With regard to the money that would be going back to the general fund versus the TIF funding, that is important, but we have enough in reserves to be able to bridge the time span for us to get this figured out before we make any kind of a decision that could actually put us into a position that would be detrimental to the city in the future versus helping to move the city forward.
Thank you, Georgette. Jeff Jones.
Yeah, I think that there was a number of people who, including myself, who expressed, I guess, disappointment in the process that this was presented and how it came up. and we're either given this 95 or 50% choice. And that's one of the reasons I was, inclined to support keeping it at 95, but then I understand the very good points for the reduction. And so I was in the minority opposing keeping it at 95, but I think there is definitely some merit to not going all the way down to 50. But my question is, last year or this year, we gave back on a one-time basis a chunk of money. I'm hearing a lot of uncertainty as to whether we should, what our plans in the future and whether we should, give some of the money back or none of the money back. Why can't we do another one-time return of money to satisfy the budget needs for the upcoming year, with the understanding that we're going to focus our plans and come up with a proposal for the future that involves a percentage that all sides are comfortable with?
Mike, I think that question is probably for you. I hate to put you on the spot.
No, that's quite all right. And I know, again, we've got Ashley on the line listening as well. If she wants to chime in, she can. I believe it's actually the last 2 years that we have spilled money from the South End CRA back to the city of Jacksonville and to the city of Jacks Beach General Fund. A couple of concerns that we have is the more frequently that you continue to spill the money, the more you're demonstrating a need that perhaps the money is not necessary in the South End. So obviously it's going to raise a flag with the auditors at the city of Jacksonville. Also, it may raise some eyebrows at the state level. As I think Art and a few others are aware, there were some issues going back a few years ago down in South Florida with regards to CRA funds, how they were being used, and it drew attention on a statewide level. The last thing I would say is that the city of Jacks Beach wants to be the poster child for why CRA discussions are being picked up again with the legislature in Tallahassee. So anything we can do to show that we are adhering to the rules and policies associated with CRAs and not necessarily raise flags, the better off we're going to be. Ashley, I don't know if you want to speak anything from our auditor's perspective versus Jacksonville's auditors.
I think from the perspective of Jacksonville, by not entering into an interlocal agreement, it does not give them an opportunity to plan for the funds. And then for our own auditors, because we don't have a plan and the kind of funds are being returned ad hoc, it doesn't make it reliable for long-term projections.
Jeff, did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, but I would think that if we presented it in the terms of we're going to have a plan by next December or whatever to govern the future, that this is an interim. We understand that there are some excess funds now, but with our plans that we've got in design, that may not be the case going forward. So I think if it's presented with, hey, we're doing this, but we're coming up with the plan that will justify what we're doing going forward, I don't see that that could be viewed as a negative.
If I could ask a quick question of Ashley. Ashley, based on the current trajectory that we have with expenditures in the South End CRA, are we currently on a trajectory for spillage again for a third year in a row?
Yes, sir. The 2020 budget contemplates a 50% reduction. But then the requirements of the South End District or any CRA tax increment trust fund is that at the end of every year, whatever remains in the trust fund balance has to be appropriated to a specific project. And you may not unappropriate it and put it to another project for another budget cycle. So that kind of the state statutes are speaking to kind of long-term plans. So currently with our South End CRA, all the remaining projects that were identified in the 2011 master plan are included in the CIP. So over the next 5 years, we have $22 million appropriated for the remaining projects in the 2011 master plan. And we're using the 50% model, and we have adequate funding each year And then once we've reached that 5th year, if we do not have a reduction and we do not have the projects quantified at that time, we will have to return the money to Jacksonville as part of the year-end appropriation.
Thank you.
Jeff, you still have the floor. Are you, does that answer your question? You're muted.
Oh, again, I think with, I understand that, but we're talking if we voted not to return any money, we'd be in a position of having to justify it with a plan. I'm saying let's try to come to a common ground or an interim approach that gives, that meets the budgetary needs of the cities while we make our concrete plan that meets the statutory requirements. And we can do it on a short term. Let's, get our act together and get the gears going to come up with a concrete revised future plan to cover all these things that we've been talking about.
Thank you, Jeff. I don't disagree with you. And there may be some, politically speaking, maybe some merit to waiting on the next administration that comes in 2 years and cutting a deal with those guys. Georgette, you're at the top of my list.
Thanks, Art. I agree with Jeff, and it's really important for us to be able to say what it is that we are now trying to accomplish, and anything that we decide that we want to try and accomplish now as what we want to spend the money on. It's also very important that those projects fall within our current agreement with the county. Any of those projects that fall outside of that agreement, that is where you need to have that renegotiation. And there's a lot of negotiating that needs to go on between now and I'm putting out a 2-year timeline. So that could be a new administration for the county, that we need to figure out what it is under our current agreement we can do. And what is it that we want to do? What falls outside of our current agreement that needs to be renegotiated? And those that fall within our current agreement, what are the fundings? What is the funding for those projects? And I know Ashley noted that remaining projects in the master plan. I have yet to see a master plan, a written plan of what it is that we are trying to accomplish in the South End development. And I think that's more problematic, is that we don't have a documented, these are our goals, this is what we hope to achieve by, what year are we in, 2021. And this is the funding we need for that. I'm sure that there is a master plan out there, and I'm sure that there are many plans in people's heads as to what the goals are or were for the South End, but we need to have a documented plan similar to what we have downtown. The downtown area, we've got multiple plans. We've got vision plans. We've got 3 or 4 plans going on, and we need to figure out, we're trying to align all the plans we have for downtown, but on the South End, we're planless. And we need to have that plan, determine how much that plan is going to cost. Well, first, have the plan, determine what can be done in our current agreement with the county. So we have that, this is agreed to, this is what we can use our current funds for. Then identify those things that fall with outside of that plan. And then if those identified projects are worthy of having to renegotiate the plan that we have with the county. And without having those numbers and those identified projects, I am uncomfortable with going all the way down to 50%. I am comfortable with a possibly 75% just because of the funding streams and the budgets that we have currently seen. They provide enough flexibility and leeway to be able to incorporate a lot of lofty projects that could possibly fall within our current agreement.
Thanks, Georgette. We're going to try to shut this thing down by 7, which is about 10 more minutes. I have Corey, you're up next.
Yeah, just really quick. I'm not that concerned about us becoming the poster child of the CRA changes. I think in South Florida, those challenges were due to the corrupt utilization of CRA fundings, not returning funding to the source. And also with the administration change and everything that we've had over the last 2 years, I think it makes sense that we could be ramping back up with a new administration to be able to spend these funds. I just don't foresee us returning funds and doing the process the correct way, that's going to really turn around and lead to a big problem. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, sir. Gary?
Just wanted to see if I can get my arms around this a little bit better. We talk about South Beach projects being scheduled out over the next 5 years, but yet we've got funding left and reserves at the end of each year. Why can't we move those projects up and encumber all of those funds in years 1 and 2 and get all of them done so that we've got time to do the rest of the planning that we need to do? The other thing I just want to caution everybody on is that the project costs that have been developed are based on engineering estimates done in 2011, escalated to 2020. What the real costs are of all of these projects, nobody really knows until they really go out to bid. So it may be significantly more than 23 million that we're talking about. Just something to keep in the back of your mind. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mike, I guess that first question was to you. What, if anything, can we do to move these projects up and get them done this year, next year, and maybe the year after?
I'll obviously get with both Jim Gilmore and our Public Works Director to see what we can do. I know that Jason Fatides is already working on advancing the playground equipment project, moving that up as soon as possible. For some of the other infrastructure projects, I think that might come down to an issue of internal capacity versus external consulting, and also whether or not any of those projects require sequencing. If you're going to be doing a certain, say you're doing a stormwater system improvement, you have to start downstream and work your way upstream. You can't have a big pipe feeding into a little pipe. So we'll have to check to see if those projects can be advanced or whether or not they have to stay spread out due to sequential workload. But we'll have to check on it.
Mike,
thank you, sir.
Can I ask a question of Mike?
Sure.
Mike, along those lines, in my conversations with Public Works, it was indicated to me that there's a need to do an overall stormwater master plan study for the district down here, and that may incorporate some additional stormwater projects. Do we have an idea when this study for the South District would be done? Or is that something we need to include in our plan that hasn't really been discussed at this point?
I believe, and I know Dennis is on the line, we actually have that as a scheduled CIP project to do a citywide stormwater assessment, which if it's not this year, I believe it's next year that we're doing that project.
Okay, well, I was understanding that there was one that the CRA, within the CRA district needed to be done. And
we've got Dennis here. We'll let him answer the question.
Yes. Okay, so we have already been working with a consultant on the South Beach projects to get those under design as they are in the CRA documents. We are also working on a citywide stormwater plan with the same engineer. So we kind of have two trains, both heading in the same direction by the same engineering company. So we're struggling a little bit to try to get everything all put together because they're looking at citywide for part of it. They're also looking at South End stuff. They're also looking at Central Basin stuff. And you're right, Gary, there's a lot of projects, and Mike hit it right on the head. There's a lot of these projects that can they all be done at once? They possibly can. Of course, when you advance timelines like that, that always comes at a cost, and it's generally not a cost savings. It's generally a cost a cost add to being able to try to do that much work all at one time. So I know a lot of our projects are being looked at. We've got our design engineering group. Like I said, we've been working, we have to negotiate with them, telling them what our scope is. They put that together, kind of come back with a fee. We argue back and forth to try to figure out what's an appropriate amount of money to pay for the work that they're requesting. As soon as we have that completed, which we are still expecting to have those all completed within the next 2 months, we'll be back in front of the CRA board for approval, and then immediately following that back in front of the city council to approve that same and appropriate that funds yet in FY21. That's going to take anywhere from 9 months to 12 months, maybe a little longer, maybe shorter. I'm not for sure until we get through the scope and the fee process to know how quick they're going to get done with these plans, so that we have an idea that says, okay, we can take the design, now we can bid it, now we can find out all these unanswered questions. Is $23 million going to be enough for a lot of these projects? Are we going to be short? Are we going to have funding left? Do we need to even do these projects? And that's where some of it has happened, is you are exactly right. Some of these projects were identified in the 80s. Some of them were identified, in 2011. Some of our internal staff are questioning whether these projects still need to be done to this day. So while we might have projects that are still on the books that are holding dollars, we're not for sure they need to be done until we can have the study completed.
Okay, thank you. Sandy Golding.
So Dennis, just to follow up on what you were just talking about, so this just brings up a concern to me. If we were to move some of these projects up, how does that impact projects that would potentially need to be done in the rest of the city? Because, I'm coming from a district that's a very old district, and I would be concerned if we put ourselves in a position where some of those projects don't get done when they were planned to be done because we moved up the projects for the south end. I'm expressing that concern. I don't know that you have an answer to that unless you can talk to the fact that, no, we don't have anything that would be impacted. Do you have a thought?
I do, and partially because of the difference in the CRA funding and the non-CRA funding. A lot of our abilities to be able to do projects throughout the rest of the town is based on the general funding process or water sewer funding, and how we have to spread those out over the years to assure that we don't dig too deep into our reserves. We can still maintain what we're returning back as far as a customer base. So those projects really won't be affected. The answer would be the whole, like, so we have an engineering firm that's doing the wastewater or doing the sewer master plan right now. Have already been released to work on that. We have water and stormwater, which are, like I said, are both in the negotiating phase, which we will have completed in the next 2 months with both of those engineering firms. So we'll be able to get that ball rolling. They can start drawing these plans and figure it out. And partially the reason we did the stormwater with the same engineering firm that we had with the South Beach and some of the other basin improvements is because it's quantities of scale. Why would we want to pay one engineer to figure out how to make the water go away on the south end, and then pay another engineer to look at the entire city that ultimately has to look at how does the water go away on the south end? So it makes sense to do it. So they'll be doing it at the same time. A lot of the work will be the same. Like I said, we just don't want to begin doing plans and doing projects that have been identified that may not have any value to be completed. And of course, now that we're starting to see how things run and how things work, we know where our areas of concern are. We've been working on these projects. And like I said, I think the same thing that you guys are asking is exactly what we're working towards with this upcoming CIP.
Sandy, did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Art.
All right, Francis, last person.
I just wanted to also let everyone know that we did have a discussion with Dennis, and there was many nodding heads when it came to, we did not want our stuff to push other stuff out of the way, and because that was a big concern of ours as well. So we said in general, we didn't vote on it, but we said in general that we were, as a board, pretty happy with giving Dennis the tools and the money to utilize third-party people to help them push projects if they came across a stage where they were short on manpower. So we did have that discussion on the board because we do realize that we didn't want that to happen. So I just want you to know, Sandy, that we did have that discussion in full. We haven't voted on anything, but we did pretty much tell Dennis that we are on board for spending money to get him the extra help he needs to get things going.
Well, we're at the 7 o'clock mark. I told the mayor that I try to get it stopped by then. One of the questions that she asked me was, is this something that everybody thinks it's a useful meeting, and at what regularity should we do it? I think one of the reasons why we want to stop, because we could probably talk here another hour and a half, but I think we started off saying it's going to be 90 minutes. And you always got to kind of keep to a schedule where you do these sort of things. And didn't know if you guys want to do this quarterly, if you want to do this monthly. Didn't know what some of the thoughts were. Anybody? Madam Mayor?
I feel like quarterly is a good frequency. I think monthly might get a little too repetitive.
Fernando, you're saying something?
Quarterly, I agree. Actually, I find this very constructive, and I know everyone has a different schedules. And Mike, can you send those pictures? I would like to see them, if possible.
Georgette?
Thanks. I agree with quarterly. I called this meeting, asked for this meeting, or see if there's a consensus to have this meeting, specifically because the council is going to be voting on the TIF funding in the South End relatively soon. And I thought that there was a need for us to get together to really discuss that one area, what it's trying to be, and the funding, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. I agree with quarterly. I think quarterly addresses the main issues, but specifically, definitely whenever there are large budgetary, like now, we're voting on the TIF funding and the percentage for the budget. So big issues like that, we definitely need to meet as a group to make sure that we are all on the same page and moving forward in the same direction.
Thank you, Georgette. Francis?
I would just like to say that part of the new CRA person is supposed to be our liaison between the two groups. So you guys are getting the information you're going to need because they're supposed to be able to speak to you on our behalf. They're also supposed to talk to all the other departments to make sure that our things are not being held up for some other reason. I love you all. I would love to see you all again every quarter, but I think it's important that whoever we hire, we empower them to be our liaison between our groups and then bring us together when they feel like we need to have a discussion because she's unable or he's unable to make sure that the points we're making are being heard. So I kind of feel, yes, tentatively, let's do quarterly with the understanding that we would like our liaison to do their job. So that's all I would like to say about that.
Thank you. Corey?
I agree with Francis. I think we need to wait till the new person comes on board. Whatever we need to do to move this train faster, get it moving forward as fast as we possibly can, I'm good with. But I do think having a liaison that is active and will help move the ball forward as quickly as possible is definitely what I want to see. I mean, I think we agree, pencil it in quarterly, but if we need to do it more often, or if we just need to do just with the liaison with the new person, that's fine too.
Corey, I have to say, I love hearing from you because you've been in my shoes, you've been in these shoes, and so you feel our pain. Sandy?
I appreciate Francis's comments, and I do look forward to us having that CRA manager. But I agree with Corey. I think we need to go ahead and put these on the calendar for quarterly, and then once that CRA manager gets their feet up under them, if we feel that we need to change the frequency or modify anything, we can do that. But for now, we don't have that CRA manager. So I say we go ahead, and I would support quarterly as well.
All right, so we'll get somebody from staff to kind of organize when and where that is and time and all that sort of stuff, because if we try to do it now, we'll be here another 15, 20 minutes. I will hand this off to our mayor. Chris, thank you.
Thank you, Art, and thank you guys all for your participation and your candor. A lot of good questions were asked. Also want to thank all the staff with their cameras off for sitting in with us and being available to answer our questions. And I think we are representing different things. We have our city council members who are representing the citizens of the community, and the CRA who are representing their board and their specific purview. I think we have a lot of things in common, and I think I feel really good about the direction. I know it's been slow. I know it's been frustrating. We're so close, guys. So hang in there, and let's keep things moving forward. So thank you guys all for your time tonight. Mike, do you have anything else to say before we close out?
I do not. I will send out all of those pictures to both the council and CRA tomorrow. We'll have that sent out by Chris Wright. And we'll also have Chris start taking a look at the calendar to see about the next meeting quarterly. So 3 months out.
Great. Thank you, guys. Have a great night.
Thank you,
Thank you all. Thank you.